There's something sacred about how a day begins. Before your feet hit the floor, before the notifications begin buzzing, before the world starts pulling at your attention, there is a choice. And that choice, though simple, defines everything that follows. Will you begin with God, or will you begin in reaction to everything else? If you don't start with God, you'll spend the rest of the day trying to fix what you could have surrendered. That sentence isn't just poetic, it's practical. It's a reflection of how many of us live, racing to manage pressure, untangle confusion, and chase peace through productivity. But here's the truth. Clarity doesn't come from control. It comes from connection. So let's begin at the beginning. Not the to-do list, not the unread emails, not the mental replay of yesterday's stresses. Let's begin with a pause, a breath, a question. What voice did you hear first this morning? Was it fear, pressure, the noise of your own expectations? Or was it the steady whisper of God's wisdom, reminding you that before the world asks something from you, heaven offers something to you? Because how you start isn't just a detail, it's a direction. The power of the first voice. The first voice we hear in the morning often sets the tone for the rest of our day. If it's anxiety, we begin running. If it's self-doubt, we shrink. If it's busyness, we bury ourselves in tasks. But if it's God, we start grounded, rooted, centered in truth that outlasts emotions and circumstances. Before the texts, the meetings, the demands, did you pause? Did you invite Him into the details? We live in a world that demands constant output, constant answers, decisions, and movement. But what if the strength to move forward doesn't come from figuring everything out, but from sitting still and asking for wisdom first? Begin with prayer, begin with presence. If you're tired of walking in circles, emotionally, spiritually, relationally, it's not because you're lazy or broken. It might just be that you've been starting in the wrong place. Prayer is not a last resort. It's the launching pad for clarity. It's not weak to begin with prayer. It's wise. Starting your day in God's presence doesn't mean you'll avoid every problem. But it does mean you won't face them alone. It means your peace will not be attached to outcomes but rooted in intimacy. So today, don't rush. Start with me. Start with grace. Start with prayer. If you're scrolling, searching, or just trying to catch your breath, this is your moment to stop, to inhale peace, to exhale pressure, to open your hands and invite heaven into the hour ahead. Let's make space now. The promise of James 1:5. If any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to him. James 1:5. This isn't a suggestion, it's a promise, one that doesn't come with shame, preconditions, or religious performance. God doesn't withhold wisdom from the confused. He welcomes your questions. Have you ever hit that moment when you didn't know what to do? Emotionally, financially, relationally. You stand at a fork in the road, and you know your next move matters, but everything feels foggy. The opinions around you are split. The options look equal, and you're paralyzed not by laziness, but by the weight of the unknown. James doesn't tell us to figure it out. He tells us to ask. And when you do, God doesn't roll his eyes. He doesn't scold you for not having it all together. He gives generously, without fault. That's the kind of Father he is. Wisdom that doesn't come from the world. The wisdom James talks about isn't the kind that comes from experience alone. It's not the type you get from self-help books or trending advice. It comes straight from God's mind, an eternal, unshakable source that sees the whole picture when we only see pieces. This is why we ask, not to manipulate God into blessing our decisions, but to submit our decisions before they're even made. Solomon understood this. In 1 Kings 3, God tells him, "Ask me for anything." And Solomon doesn't ask for riches or revenge. He asks for wisdom, for discernment. And because of that request, God not only gave him wisdom, but everything else too. When you ask for wisdom, you're not asking to be perfect. You're asking to be aligned. You're saying, God, I don't just want what looks good. I want what is you. I want to choose based on what's eternal, not just what's urgent. That's the difference between surviving the day and walking through it with supernatural clarity. The crossroad of every morning. Every day you wake up is a new crossroad. You have the option to rush into it with your own plan, or to pause and ask the most important question. Lord, what do you see? That question is where wisdom begins. That's the prayer that moves heaven to respond. Not because God was waiting for a fancy phrase, but because He loves when we seek His guidance more than His permission. Because let's be honest, sometimes our prayers aren't really about surrender. They're about God endorsing the plan we already started running with. We say, God, lead me, but we've already got the spreadsheet built, the pros and cons weighed, and the wheels in motion. But grace meets us even there. God doesn't shame us for being human. He invites us back to wisdom, back to listening, back to the quiet stillness that precedes every wise step. When silence isn't abandonment. What if you've already asked for wisdom, and the silence is stretching longer than you expected? That doesn't mean God has gone silent. It might mean He's inviting you deeper, into stillness, into a trust that isn't based on noise, but on knowing. Silence isn't abandonment. It's often preparation. The whisper is still coming. And when it does, it will carry more weight than 1,000 opinions. So today, begin again. Don't carry the pressure alone. Don't walk into another decision without first asking for divine direction. Because wisdom isn't weakness, it's readiness. So you've paused. You've asked. Maybe you even cried a little this morning. Not because you're weak, but because your soul is tired of walking in circles. And now, something inside you is stirring. A new kind of clarity. Not the loud kind, but the grounded kind. Not certainty in every detail, but confidence in who's guiding the way. This is where we shift from asking for wisdom to walking in it. This is where surrender becomes strategy. Proverbs 3:5-6. Trust over understanding. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to Him, and He will make your paths straight. Proverbs 3:5-6. Let this verse do more than pass through your ears. Let it settle into your spirit. Because it's not asking you to fake confidence or pretend to have a map. It's asking you to trust, and that's much harder. Trust isn't passive. Trust is active dependence. It means holding up your logic, your plans, your instincts, and saying, Lord, even these are submitted to you. To trust is to admit, my understanding is limited. My perspective is narrow. My instinct isn't always right. And instead of leaning harder on what you know, you lean fully on who you know, God. When you do that, when you submit all your ways, not just the ones you feel confused about, He promises to direct your path. Not make it perfect, not make it painless, but make it clear. When trust costs comfort, it's easy to trust God when everything is going according to plan. But what about when He redirects you entirely? What about when He closes the door you've been waiting to walk through? What if the path he's making straight leads away from what felt certain? This is where real trust begins, where your logic ends, because God's direction often contradicts our desire for predictability. I've been there, wanting a green light so badly that I confused God's silence for approval, pressing forward with what felt wise in my own eyes until I hit a wall. And sometimes, hitting that wall wasn't punishment. It was mercy. It was God's way of protecting me from a future I couldn't yet see. Some of the most loving things God does for us come disguised as disappointment, not because He enjoys withholding, but because He sees beyond what we can. And His no is never empty. It's filled with redirection, refinement, and preparation. Psalm 25, a heart that wants to be taught. Show me your ways, Lord, teach me your paths. Guide me in your truth and teach me, for you are God my Savior, and my hope is in you all day long. Psalm 25, 4-5. David doesn't just ask to be rescued. He asks to be taught. There's a profound difference between asking God for a way out and asking Him for a way through. One is rooted in panic, the other in patience. One looks for escape, the other longs for formation. Have you ever noticed how much strength it takes to admit, I don't know the way? This prayer isn't weakness, it's wisdom, because it's not just about direction. It's about discipleship. It's not only about asking God what to do, it's about asking Him who you need to become as you do it. That's what David models here. He doesn't just want to avoid mistakes. He wants to be formed, and that kind of formation only happens when you stop rushing to answers and start listening for instruction. Real wisdom is relational. Wisdom isn't about collecting more information. It's about growing in intimacy with the one who gives it. God doesn't just drop wisdom like a vending machine when we ask the right thing. He draws us into a relationship where wisdom flows not just from the answer, but from His presence. Look at what Moses prayed in Exodus 33. Teach me your ways so I may know you. Not, teach me so I don't mess up. Not, teach me so I can lead well. But, teach me so I can know you. That's the kind of wisdom that can't be shaken by opinions. It's the kind of discernment that doesn't come from figuring life out, but from walking closely with the God who already has. And that changes how you wait, because now waiting isn't passive, it's purposeful. Isaiah 55, higher thoughts, better timing. For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. Isaiah 55, 8-9. Some verses don't fix your confusion. They reframe your perspective. This one doesn't explain why the door didn't open. It doesn't promise you'll understand everything soon. It doesn't tell you when the answer is coming. It tells you this: God sees from a different altitude. When we look at delays, He sees development. When we look at closed doors, He sees divine protection. When we ask, why isn't this working? He's often saying, I'm working on something deeper than you realize. In John 11, Jesus delayed going to see Lazarus. To everyone else, it looked like a mistake. They assumed he was late. But Jesus wasn't operating on their understanding. He was operating on resurrection timing. God is not reactive, He is redemptive. His late is often the setup for a greater glory. And when you remember that, you can breathe a little easier. You don't have to figure it all out. You just have to stay close. When you don't know, stay near. Maybe today you're sitting in silence. You've asked for direction. You've laid it all down, and still no clarity. You're not abandoned. You're invited into deeper dependence, into trust that doesn't demand explanation, but finds rest in God's unchanging character. By now you've paused, you've asked, you've chosen to trust, and maybe the answer hasn't arrived, but something else has. A deep stillness. Not the kind that means everything is resolved, but the kind that reminds you that you're not alone in the tension. You're not abandoned in the silence. You are held, guided, led. This final part is not about wrapping things up neatly. It's about learning how to walk with God in the waiting, through the pressure, and toward wisdom, even when clarity isn't immediate. Let's finish this journey not with resolution, but with realignment. Let God set the pace. You've likely been here before. A big decision is looming. You've done the math. You've considered the emotional cost. You've prayed, or at least you think you did. But if you're honest, you weren't really asking for direction. You were asking for God to bless the decision you'd already made. We do that more than we admit. We say, "God, lead me." But deep down we're hoping He'll simply agree with our plan. We move, then ask for peace to catch up. But that's not surrender. That's subtle control. Real surrender says, "God, I'm not asking for your stamp of approval. I'm asking for your wisdom, even if it means you say no." This isn't about shame. It's about alignment. Because God isn't looking for performance. He's looking for posture. A heart willing to be rerouted. A spirit willing to be still. Ask the deeper question today. Lord, do I want your wisdom? Or just your approval of what I already want to do? That question might break you open, but it will also set you free. One whisper, 1,000 opinions. In a world full of strategies, spreadsheets, and strong opinions, you don't need more noise. You need one whisper from God. Because that whisper carries a weight no logic can match. God's wisdom often comes like a stillness in the middle of chaos. Not loud but undeniable. Not flashy but clear. You might miss it if you're moving too fast. You might overlook it if you're only looking for big signs. Sometimes the whisper comes through a verse that hits different. Sometimes it comes through a conversation. Sometimes it comes in silence and your spirit just knows. And sometimes the direction isn't go, it's pause. Not everything needs an immediate response. Not every door should be walked through just because it's open. Not every good thing is a God thing. Discernment is not about doing what looks right. It's about doing what is aligned. When you pause to listen, heaven always has something to say. The power of the pause. You might be holding a decision right now, a big one that affects your family, your career, your future. Before you act, let this be a holy moment. Take 5 quiet minutes. Turn your phone face down. Silence the world for just a breath. Ask slowly, Lord, what do you want to say before I move? Don't rush it. Don't force clarity. Just be still. God isn't just after the outcome. He's after your heart. He's not in a hurry, and He's not threatened by your questions. If the answer comes, rejoice. If it doesn't, rest. Because sometimes the pause is the miracle. Sometimes God isn't withholding clarity. He's building your capacity to trust. You don't need to be strong today. You need to be surrendered. Let go of the pressure. You weren't made to carry the pressure of perfect decision-making. God never asked that of you. What He did ask is to trust Him with your steps. So if you're waiting for peace before you move, don't look for the kind the world gives, the kind based on circumstances, certainty, or consensus. Look for the kind that comes from obedience, from trusting even when you're trembling. Because following Jesus was never supposed to feel like fear. It's meant to feel like freedom. Let go of the pressure to impress. Let go of the fear of failure. Let go of the internal voice that says you can't get it wrong. If you're listening to God, You're already moving in the right direction. Even your hesitation to act without Him is holy. Even your waiting is worship. Boldness in the right things. When the time comes, and it will come, that the decision is in front of you and clarity is present. Move boldly. Move with the courage that says, God brought me here. He'll lead me through this. Maybe that means saying yes to something that scares you. Maybe it means saying no to something that looks safe but isn't sacred. Maybe it means staying when you wanted to run, or walking away when you thought you'd stay forever. Whatever the call, boldness isn't about loud steps. It's about aligned ones. Obedience will cost you comfort, but it will give you clarity. The kind you can't buy, replicate, or rush. Prayer. Your final anchor. Let's close with what started this all. Prayer. Not performance, not pressure, just presence. Pray this slowly. Let each line sink in. Father, I don't know every turn ahead, but I know you're already there, so I release the pressure, the plans, the fear. I trust not in what I see, but in who you are. Reorder my heart, realign my priorities. If my yes isn't holy, make it silent. If my no protects your purpose, let it be bold. I want your pace, not just your permission. Guide me, shape me, teach me, lead me, not just to what's next, but to what's right. Because your ways are higher, and your thoughts wiser than mine, and that's more than enough for today. Your next step. Stillness, then obedience. If you're still unsure what to do today, that's okay. Just keep asking, keep listening, keep surrendering. God hasn't gone quiet. He's just speaking in a frequency that requires stillness. You don't need a full map to take the next step. You just need faith to follow the shepherd. And you can do that because you're not walking blind. You're walking behind the one who knows the end from the beginning. So breathe, trust, smile. You're not late. You're not lost. You're led. And that changes everything. Today, if this spoke to your spirit type, I'm starting here with you, Lord. Send this to someone who's carrying the weight of a decision. Because maybe what they need isn't a solution. It's a sacred pause. And tomorrow, come back. Let's seek again. Let's listen again. Let's walk this journey of peace and wisdom, one surrendered step at a time. You're not alone. You're covered, seen, and led by the God who gives generously, without fault, without fail. We'll be here again in the morning. Until then, stay rooted, stay expectant, and always start with Him.